Super Bowl isn't just about the touchdowns and the halftime shows. It's also about the big bets and even bigger wins. Cha-ching. But before you start celebrating your windfall, there's a catch you might not have considered. You got to pay taxes. Yeah, even if you gamble, you got to pay taxes. Here to guide us through the maze of tax obligations on gambling winnings is Nicole Bononi-Wilson, a tax controversy manager at Prager Metis. I love that title, tax controversy manager. Tell us why that title, Nicole. Good morning to you.
So tax controversy involves in dealing with various taxing agencies in which you either owe the IRS, you're under examination. We try not to be too controversial, but we have our moments.
So that's fascinating, by the way. I love that. Let's start with the basics. If somebody makes a personal bet, obviously, are they going to go report that if the IRS doesn't necessarily know about it? We're talking here really more in terms of people who use the apps, right, and use the official legal betting services.
So sports betting, as we know, is now legal in 38 states, but any income, all sources of income are taxable, especially gambling winnings such as that. It's taxed as ordinary income. So say, you have your office poll and you put in the beginning of the playoffs and you were lucky because let's be honest, we all want to win and you won $500. You have to report that on page 1 of your 1040 filing. It is right. Taxable. So
as I once won $500 in a state lottery, and I remember a friend of mine at work saying, that's the state. Do not forget to file taxes, pay taxes on it. For the few dollars in taxes, it literally is just a few dollars. You don't want the headache and the meeting later, as they say, right? So if somebody, I mean, it's a whole different issue now that we have gambling apps in New Jersey. If you win using one of the gambling apps, do you get a form at the end of the year from your winnings?
So with the federal, it's if you're $600 or more, they will provide you with what's called a W-2G. Most casinos, most agencies will have some form of withholding. However, not all. New Jersey, specifically the state, it's if you win $10,000 or more. And again, no, those are just for the winnings. The losses and how it's treated and how you claim them is a different ballgame. So
tell us about that, because years ago, I didn't think you could deduct losses from gambling. In fact, I remember there was an old Odd Couple show. I don't know if you're old. You're probably not old enough to remember the Odd Couple, but
I am actually.
Oh, okay. So Oscar Madison, there you go. Oscar Madison was a heavy gambler, and I remember him saying that I can't deduct this on my taxes, and that literally has stood out in my brain. I'm 57 years old since I was a kid. So, are you saying that losses from gambling could be tax deductible?
Well, not necessarily. So your gambling losses can be deducted up until your game, so your win. But it's not done on the front page of the return where you're going to report. And this is your federal filing. So for your federal, you report your income on the front page. And if you're using TurboTax or some other filing source program, it will let you input it. Now, where you deduct the losses, and this is where it gets a little tricky, is on the Schedule A, which most would know as itemized deductions. However, if you are not taking an itemized deductions, because let's be honest, a vast majority of taxpayers take that standard deduction, then you cannot claim the losses for the federal. New Jersey is different. They allow you to what's called net on line 24. So you can subtract automatically your winnings and then your losses and input that number. But your federal, you have to report the winnings. And then if you're itemized, then you're able to get the losses. But then there's another catch, which gets tricky because we all know we have online betting and then we have casinos. Right. We're fortunate to have a vast majority out there. So let's say you go to Atlantic City for a weekend with the friends and you're at the casino and you hit big on a, let's say a slot machine, you win 5,000. But then throughout the year, you did your sports betting and you lost 6,000. You cannot net those two together. You have to keep very detailed records and keep it as separate transactions. And to simplify this a little, to make this easier, let's say you go to Atlantic City at the Hard Rock, you end the night there, you travel down to Oceans. Now that is a new session. Whatever gambling you do in Oceans, you have to keep separate records of those wins and losses. So not as straightforward as you think.
Because in my mind, my thought was if, in my brain, if you say spend $10,000 over the course of the year on gambling, whether it be lottery or whatever else, legal gambling, at the end of
Mhm.
the year, maybe you won a total of $4,000, that you had a net loss of 6,000. If you kept meticulous records on all of that, would that then be a net loss up to the winning amount? So in other words, would your $4,000 be thus negated by the 10,000 that you had spent?
For your New Jersey filing, yes. For the federal, only if you itemize your deductions. So
Gotcha. Not if you do an easy form. You can't do that. Not with a short form, but only if you itemize. Sounds to me like it might be safer to invest a few dollars and have a professional tax preparer do this the right way. I always say for the amount of headache it would save, it's worth the however much, whether you go with a CPA or another tax preparer, have somebody who's a little more experienced than you. Because I have tried the TurboTaxes of the world. It's not to single them out. And there's always a point where they say something and I don't understand what that is, where I pray, God, I wish I had a tax preparer there. So somebody like you, that's why you exist, right? You make our lives easier. Thank you so
and not
much.
controversial.
Exactly. I love that. It is so good to have you on. Please don't be a stranger. Nicole Bononi-Wilson, a tax controversy manager at Prager Metis. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on New Jersey.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. Come back again, please.